So if we go back to this paragraph and we inspect it and we use an REM measurement for it, let's do font size 1 REM. You can see that the font size changes significantly. It's now very big. If we change the default font size in our browser, I just moved our settings page over to a different window so we could change this side by side with the text. And we scroll down to our font size here and we set it to the default, which is medium. You can see that it brings the font size down. Now the difference between EMs and REMs is that REM is relative to the base font size of the browser, not to its containing element. So we can use REMs to freely size different elements on the page without inadvertently connecting them with one another. For most browsers, the default font size is 16 pixels, which is why this is just a little bit bigger here than it is when we set it to 14 pixels. But we can figure out what the right size would be by doing a quick calculation. We'll do 14 pixels divided by 16 pixels. And so what we want is 0.875 REMs. So let's change this right here to 0.875. And when we do that, it gives it the same font size as our one down here, which is still being measured in pixels. The difference between these two paragraphs, though, is that now the user has some control over how they see this one. So REMs seem kind of perfect at this point, because they give the adaptability and accessibility of being able to change the font size, but it also doesn't tie our elements to one another like EMs do. But it still has a little bit of a flaw, at least when it comes to usability, which is that most of us learned how to size our font in pixels. So as a front-end developer, you develop an intuitive sense around what 12 pixels is, 14 pixels, 16 pixels when it comes to font size. So when it comes to translating those to REMs, it's going to be a fraction of some kind, which is harder to remember. It takes a little bit of calculation, and ultimately, because it's a little bit more of a pain, you might be less inclined to use it. So the solution to this, if it turns out to be a problem for you, is to use a CSS preprocessor, so you can use a little bit of code inside of your CSS to perform this calculation and still use pixel sizes, but have them translated into REMs when it comes to producing your actual style sheet.